All right. Let's see everybody who's getting in here for this cool webinar. Um, if you guys could too, you can let us know where you guys are from. That would be really cool. Give your city a little shout out before we start here quickly. Let's see, all right, we're at 30. Okay, good. All right, guys, don't be shy. Let us know. Okay, Dallas, Texas in the building, New York. There we go. So far, so good. Big states. DC in the house, what's up? Oh, we got London, Atlanta, Toronto. Okay, we getting the whole world. I like this.
Yeah, there we go. Hey, we got some Maryland in here.
Yeah, Cali by way of Alabama. Yeah, that's awesome. So, guys, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So to everybody who's tuned in, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. But more than anything, I think you guys will really appreciate these opportunity and also this information. My name is Dennis Boateng. If you don't know who I am, I'm actually a recent graduate of the Sneaker Essentials program and just been given the awesome opportunity to host this webinar. So today we'll be talking to an amazing person. All right, and I'm just gonna give a little slight intro here. Her name is Meggan Simpson, and she's the senior trim developer at Under Armour. So we're gonna talk a little bit about tricks and tips to break into the sneaker footwear industry. But before we get into that, for people who don't know about the Sneaker Essentials program. It is a program that will help you learn the business, but also map your career. Right? So you have a passion for sneakers. Well, guess what? Sneaker Essentials is the program that can help you actually land an opportunity there if you take advantage of it. Okay, so pretty much in the program, you get to learn about the design process, the history behind sneakers. You get to learn about the media that goes into sneakers. You get to learn about manufacturing, starting your own brick and mortar. There's so much information that people do not want to miss out on. So for people who are in this webinar, if you're in the program, amazing, take advantage of it. If you have friends who are talking about it, get them to sign up, okay? And they can do that at yellowbrick.co/sneakers. So that's my spiel there. So now I'm going to pass the mic over to Meggan Simpson.
So hey everyone, I'm just going to do a really quick brief of, I do work for Under Armour, but I am not representing the business. I'm not a spokesperson for the brand. So everything that I'm saying are my own ideas and stories of my career and my path. So there is a Q&A. There are some things that I just have to be confidential about. So it's just simply, there's some questions that I just can't answer about Under Armour specifically. So just a quick heads up there. Also, just on the side, feel free if you have like portfolio or designs, if you want to share with me directly. But I'm definitely not the ticket into the industry. I can't really vouch for anyone, but we'll kind of get into, again, the tips and the tricks that I have to get your foot in the door and to actually be able to work for a large company like this. So I am a visual person, so I'm going to throw up a little thing here. Here we go. Okay, so just in general about me. So my overall goal in doing this is I really want to see more diversity in the industry. More often than not, I'm sitting in meetings of people who look like each other and talk like each other. So the more that we can get people in this industry with various backgrounds, the better the product is going to be. So I'm a huge advocate to share out the things that I've learned to try and get different and various individuals in. It's super important to be diverse in this space. And I don't think we've really seen the next big innovative product yet. So my goal is to try and get you in here with companies like the companies I work for to make good product. So a little bit about my timeline and kind of my career. I started in as retail. And I think it's really important to kind of start there, have some knowledge in that, because that's the point of sale. A lot of you are probably have taken the Sneaker Essentials course or in the process of it. It goes through parts of that, of the point of sale and that part of it. So it's really important. I did just want to call out, I do have a bachelor's. I did get a bachelor's of science at Western Oregon University, but it was not in this field. So I am 100% self-taught. And I think that's kind of how I got to where I am. So I started out of college at a small headquarters. Company was called Grenade Gloves. They did snowboard apparel. And you can kind of see I just listed out my roles. So I really kind of grew within the industry. I think small companies are really ideal to work for because you can kind of gauge what all the different roles are. You can kind of really talk to those people versus larger companies where you're a little bit more siloed. And then from Grenade, I worked in the license space. I will get actually further into this, what licensee, what that even means. But it was super important for me and vital to get me to where I was going. I was working in the license space. I worked on Converse products with the Converse team, so for Nike. And then I worked after that for New Balance product. So I got to see some of that go on, and then to where I'm ultimately at Under Armour now. So I think the big takeaway from this is it just takes time. You got to kind of have to maneuver your way into these spaces. And you definitely have to be patient. So we'll kind of just kick it off into the tips and tricks. So the first one, let's see here, is the overarching, just knowing your path in general. So you kind of need to know where you want to land and what your dream job is. I'm not going to spend a ton of time breaking down every role that's in the industry. I'll just keep it pretty high level. But I will say that if you can research any of these roles, and I would definitely recommend that. If you just go to job postings for these specific titles, you could read into the qualifications, and that can kind of gauge some of the things that you need to learn and get to. The key here is just to be authentic and genuine to your passion. There's no right way to do this. So it's just kind of understanding and gauging what you're really passionate about. So just the three that I'm kind of calling out, I don't want to leave too many out, but I think there are three that are usually the most talked about. The first one being design and graphics. So in that space, you can be a graphic designer, you could be a product designer or a print developer. In the next key, there's development. This is where you're actually going to be working with the factories on the actual product. It's important to call out that most designers, they're not going to be developing their product. But to be a good designer, you're going to need to know the development and all the process that happens in the factory to create it. So there's different roles in that as well. It can come down to even packaging roles, what that garment will ultimately go into, the box that it goes into. I mean, we're getting pretty cool kits now that they're coming out with, so it's a pretty cool space to be in. And then the third larger one is product management. This is where you can be a product line manager, a category manager, and even a wear test manager. You don't really often hear about wear testing, but it's a huge, huge part in the industry. This is where you're sending out products to be wear tested on either a consumer space or either a team space, and you're getting all that feedback from them. A lot of times we don't get a ton of feedback when you're working in the industry from the point of sale retail space. You don't get to hear every day what people are complaining about. We rely really heavily on our wear test programs that we have in place to make sure that that product is fitting, that it wears, that it holds up, that it's not going to be wearing on you or uncomfortable in any way or form. And, this can be on players too. I mean, I work in the team space, so we're asking collegiate teams to put on this gear and make sure that thing holds up. They're able to move freely. So it is a really cool space. It doesn't get a lot of glamour. And then some of the other things are their umbrella options. So there's sourcing and operations, there's marketing, there's shipping, logistics, and there's analytics. So you kind of probably already know what you're good at or what you kind of have leaned into already in your career. So you can utilize that as tools to make you more appealing to get to where you want to go. I will say that interviewing when you get to larger companies, it's not easy. It's one thing to kind of get in the door, but once you're there, when you get to the larger companies, it's usually a panel interview. You will be tested sometimes if you're in that development space. You will actually have to take a test in front of people, or you're going to have to do a project and present out to that. So it's something just to kind of be prepared for. And then with big companies, again, you just have to be really patient because there's a lot that happens behind the scenes when you, after the interview process. A big thing is just getting budget approvals for that role. So it takes time. So just hang in there. You might have to go on a lot of interviews and it might not work out, but just be persistent. You can do it. And it's hard really for anyone to kind of make it or break it, as I guess you can say, but definitely just be patient and be persistent and hang in there. My next tip would be, let me just make sure there's no questions that I'm not missing.
Yeah, we do have a couple questions if you would like to answer.
Yeah. So one of the questions is from John Z. It says, I'm currently in the footwear industry looking to expand my skill set. One of the biggest obstacles I faced in designing outsoles for different styles of footwear, from understanding certain points such as flex, design elements, treading, tooling, where or what would be a good route to get more training on sole designing. That's a great question. I will have a slide on this, and this is where I would really push mentorship. You're going to want to be around the people that are already in this. So it's kind of twofold. So there's going to be the suppliers, the companies and entities that are working on tooling already can be a path that you can try and find those people that work at that company and be able to ask them those questions and network with them, or other people that are in roles that you can try and just say, hey, I'm in this space, I'm trying to learn more and try and get that mentorship out from that. I don't think there is one sole entity or one sole place that's going to have all of the answers for that. I'll also touch on some other things too, as far as like textbooks and resources that you can go to for that. But I would say mentorship would probably be the best one for this, because it's going to live probably with a few people that are going to know all of those ins and outs. So it's going to be, utilizing like LinkedIn and such to try and find either the supplier that's doing it and kind of poking and getting to know with them, or the individuals in that industry. Another question is from Sung Om. What is the role of a senior trim developer? So trims is kind of a term that I don't think a lot of people know or understand. So happy to answer this one. So I'm a material developer. So my role specifically is I just don't work on the fabric of the garment. I work on all the embellishment and pretty much everything else that goes into it. So I started as a product developer. So I kind of started big, and then I'm obsessed about the details. I love little hits and things in garments. So that's the things that I obsessed on. So I kind of narrowed it in and went into the trims of it. So I not only source, so I work with design on what their concepts are. I source where the best supplier is going to be for that. I develop it with them. So I go through the prototype cycle of that. And then we test. We did a lot of testing here to make sure that it's going to hold up and it's going to wash well, and it's just not going to fall off. And then we work through the whole getting through the production and making sure there's no situations there. So it's a full kind of circle job, but it keeps me, you know, it's pretty exciting. Something new every day for sure. And then I also work I've mentioned it a little bit, but I work in the team sports space. I work on all collegiate, all sports, anything that's on field or on court. And then I also work on global football, which is soccer. So all the clubs, anything on pitch, as far as in the retail component of those. And then I work on inline, which is the retail basketball, the Steph Curry product, and then golf as well. So a lot of high visibility things. I don't have a lot of space to make errors, so I got to be really good at what I do. But, you know, I'm 10 years into this. I've the experience, so it took time to get here. Probably just answer your questions and get back into it. But one is from Oriel. How were you able to transition from a background in criminal justice and get into apparel? Were you working retail while in school? This is a really good question because I think the break out of college, really just getting your foot in the door at the very beginning is the hardest step. I was really good at Excel. That's really my answer. I'm not joking. I was very good at Excel, and my very first role in the industry was shipping. I was able to kind of monitor and track the shipment of products, and I worked my way up from that. I was working retail while I was in college. So I would say, I guess, yes, retail did help, and then my ability to have, you know, Excel. So I pay a lot of money for a degree I don't use, but, you know, it happens to the best of us, I guess. So the next tip is really just start small. This is probably the one that most people don't want to hear, but when you want to get and work for the giants, the big companies, the Nikes, the Adidas, and the Pumas, and the New Balances, you kind of have to start somewhere to get into the door. You're usually not getting right in there right out of the gate. It can happen. I'm not saying it doesn't, and it, you know, some people pull it off, but I would say more often than not, people are starting in different fields and kind of working their way in. I would recommend this actually for a couple of reasons. When you're in the industry and you work in the industry, you know that when you start out in a role, you start out in one salary, and then you're put into brackets and a matrix when you start building that ladder up. It takes a lot of time. So when you are outside of an entity and you're working maybe at a smaller company and you go to work, you start to kind of build up and build your resume. And then you're at a higher level and you're trying to interview for maybe a higher role aside from entry level. You have a lot of negotiating power on your pay. And that's probably, you know, a tip I would have loved to hear when I first started out. So glad to share it with all of you. You want to, when you go into a company, get as much as you can out of your salary, because the promotions and pay scales, they just are minimized once you're in. You know, you're still going to get promotions. You're still going to get increases, of course, but you have way more negotiating power going out into the company. So some of the options are small company headquarters. So if you work for a 15 to 30 workers in that company, you're going to have so much exposure to all the different roles and what they do. You can travel and kind of get more insight into the holistic viewpoint of a company. So it's really good to kind of have that versus working for a large company. You're siloed. You're usually only around small teams. You do cross-function and you work with them, but you're limited to your exposure. Another option is creative agencies. Creative agencies are places where you can work on multiple brand projects, whether this be marketing projects, design projects. It varies, but this is where you can build a portfolio really fast, and you can network with those larger companies and the people who work there really fast. The big takeaway I would say is make sure it's a good culture fit. Not not every big company is right for everyone. And you'll learn that kind of along the way. You want to make sure it's a right fit for you, and that you would thrive there and you would stay inspired. Creative agencies, because you're working in all of those different spaces and with those teams, you can gauge if you feel good about that company. The next one is licensee. So I kind of touched on this because I did come from a licensee company. What this means is when a large company maybe doesn't have an expertise in one specific product or a headcount, they will license that work out for another company to do it and work on it. And normally it's because they have a lot of knowledge and expertise in that space. And then that larger company will make a royalty profit from that. There's different ways and approaches to licensing programs in companies. Sometimes the larger company or the contract that you're working on might not, they will be kind of hands off, like, we trust you. You can do all of the design and build, and we'll just kind of look at the product and give you comments. Other companies, they will do the design work for you. So it kind of just depends, but you're able to build your skills really quickly. Again, you can work on multiple brands at the same time. You get that travel, you get that exposure, you get that networking. So it's kind of the best of all worlds. These are all things that you can research. I don't want to call out specific companies on these, but it's a quick Google search of different companies that are around you that are in this space. There's small ones, there's big ones, so it's kind of on you to do that research, but these are definitely really good starting points where you can get into the larger companies. Let's see here. See if there's any questions before moving on to the next one. Lawrence calls out, what's the smartest way to find a manufacturer? Man, is this the golden question? Because there really isn't. There really is not a good way to find a manufacturer that I've come across. There are kind of companies around that you can, just do a quick Google search. And maybe, Dennis, this is one that you can jump onto if you feel like this is something you can speak to. But I don't think there really is a good tool out there yet of either U.S. manufacturers, Asian manufacturers, or global manufacturers.
Yeah, and I mean, you make good points too. I mean, I don't think there's like a filter or, an app where you like, hey, give me a smart way to find it. But I think the answer that I could give, though, if, for whoever's looking for a manufacturer and doesn't have the information, if you sign up for the program, actually there is information within the Sneaker Essentials program that actually walks you through and teaches you how to network, how to keep in contact with manufacturers, whether they're within your vicinity, whether it's in your country or outside of the country, where you can learn how to send your designs, how to communicate with them, how to keep in touch and stay up on the process of everything. So if you are interested in that, like I said, you could go to the link and find out and sign up for the program, because we do have that information available.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think in one scenario, you can actually take a live tour of a manufacturer facility. They have what machines that they have in there. I mean, this is super, super important and vital information to have as a resource and a tool. So it's use it, because I wish I had Sneaker Essentials when I was kind of learning, because there really wasn't a lot of great resources out there. So it's really great to see it now kind of come about. So we'll move into the next tip. So I call it being a thought leader. So when you don't have a traditional background into this, you're going to really need to be your own advocate, and you're going to have to really lean into being self-taught. So there is no shortcut into this. You're still going to have to sacrifice and make time every day to do studying to make sure that you're like up to par with the competition. There's a lot of competition in this space. So when you're self-taught, unfortunately, you're going to have to work a little bit even harder. But luckily with tools like sneaker essentials and modules and courses, it's achievable. It's something that you can do. I would say the four that I laid out are the ones that I would say to focus the most on. These are the things through my entire experience will you the most. So that's taking courses and modules in this, your field that you're trying to get into. The next one is speaking the language. I mean, we say fake it till you make it. It's such a true thing. People are going to believe that you know what you are talking about when you actually can speak the language. Having a solid portfolio, and then being proficient in the proper software. So it's one thing to kind of call these out, but I do have resources as well that I will kind of just throw out there of things that really helped me. Sneaker Essentials obviously being one. I didn't really allude to it, but I took Sneaker Essentials myself because I've been in the accessories space. I did backpacks and I did headwear and like knits. And then I moved into apparel, but I have a huge passion for footwear. I've always been trying to, my next step is to get into the footwear space. And it's always great to kind of stay motivated, stay inspired, constantly be learning, never stop learning. So that's one of the tools that I used. One that I'll throw out there, I'm not, I don't know this person. It's just what I used. Her name is Heidi. She has a YouTube page. She has her own website. This is a great resource tool because there's a ton of free content. What you're going to learn in here is how to use Illustrator. She comes from a perspective of flat technical illustration. So she's not only going to teach how to utilize Illustrator, but it's going to be in a industry lens, which is super helpful. And it's one thing if you're trying to be into design to know the software, so Illustrator being the most common one used, you have to be really fast at it. So it's no longer just knowing how to kind of function and move around in it. You're designing like crazy. You're popping out designs super fast, and you adjust designs super fast. So you really need to be able to move quickly in that space. She has a ton of information on short keys and that such. And that's just textbooks in general that I read. One of them it's called Fashionpedia. Again, I'm not trying to plug these things, but I'm just saying you just have to find textbooks of things that are going to give you that information that you might be looking for to be able to speak the language and gain even a deeper understanding. So it's just really important to educate yourself and, again, know what a lot of those things mean. Another tie to that as well is there's a ton of acronyms in the industry. We live and die by our acronyms. Every company is a little different, but if you can kind of just have an understanding of what the basics of those are, it's super helpful. And those are things that Heidi, it's SEW Heidi, had on her page. Those are also things that when you sign up for Sneaker Essentials as well, there is a Facebook page where it houses everyone that kind of is in the course that can communicate with each other. These are things that we can share out with each other to help too. So that's what's really unique about this course in that space as well. Definitely you can pick people's brains and have an understanding, a better understanding of just industry terminology. And then for your portfolios, you need to have bodies of work to really show companies that because you don't have a degree, you know what you're doing and you can kind of back it up. It's essentially your credentials. I always say view yourself as a product. You have to be very creative on kind of how you sell yourself to companies and why they would be willing to pay to have you work there. So you need to kind of figure out how you want to stand out, how you want to differentiate yourself amongst everyone else. My big thing, authenticity and passion can sometimes supersede skill and talent. If you come in and you eat and breathe this, especially sneakers, if it's your love and your passion, that will radiate out And I know when I interview, that means so much to me because people are pretty quick learners. You can kind of pick things up as you go. Obviously, you need to know the basics, but if that's your passion and you come at it in that very passionate way, that's what's going to kind of spark me to take a risk. So just definitely be authentic to yourself. Don't try and like conform as much, you know, within reason, but stand out. You know, it matters. So let me jump into a few questions. Let's see before we move on. So JX Dub, he asked, can you please say the name of the YouTube channel again? So it's So Heidi, S-E-W Heidi. She has a website as well. It's called successfulfashiondesigner.com. She has a ton of free content. You can pay for some of the offerings there. You want to use as much supplemental tools as you can get. I personally paid for it. I benefited immensely from it. This is how I got into the industry, but I took the time to really learn how to design, and that's how I learned Illustrator. So it was beneficial for me. And let's see if there's any other questions. So has any tips on becoming a buyer for a company like Nike or Under Armour? If you have retail background, if you come from a retail background and move up in that retail kind of chain of hierarchy, being a buyer is definitely a part of that process. So I would say if you don't already have retail experience, that's a great place to start. You need to kind of understand the retail, how things merch, how things lay on the floor, inventory, how inventory flows, what's trending. It's a little bit of everything, but just look. And then if you have that, if you do have it, just look for roles that are asking for a buyer. And again, you can research kind of what the qualifications are and if that fits your space. So that would be my best recommendation there. So the next tip is around mentorship and networking. Mentorship is a little tricky. It's tricky because time is very valuable, and a lot of people don't have a lot of disposable time. So it's hard to find a mentor and one that kind of resonates and sticks. A lot of times it happens when you're in a company and you kind of are just starting out and you kind of reach out and you'll get a mentor that kind of helps guide you and network you within the company. If you're trying to find a mentor while you're not in a company, it's, again, still hard, but there are ways to do it. But it's really important. They always say it's who you know. And when you're in the industry, to get an interview, sometimes it really does rely on who you know and someone kind of vouching for you. So some of the things that I called out of really good resources about mentorship or at least networking, LinkedIn, this is where you can find people that work in jobs or at the companies you might want to work for and in similar roles. And you can kind of send messages and see if that works in that world or in that space. But again, it's just being really like understanding that not everyone's willing to share what they know. Some people, they just, again, don't have the time, but it's kind of a two-way street. So like for me, whenever I'm in a mentorship place, it's kind of, whatever I can give to someone, they're able to give to me as well. Like we definitely balance each other out. And I'm very, I don't want to ever take up someone's space. Like I don't want to ever take up someone's time without adding value to them as well, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Social media is kind of hit or miss, but it is a good way to network. Trade shows, again, actually walking trade shows and networking with the people who are walking the trade show is probably the best and most networking tool, because they're either designers or developers most of the time, or they are in that retail space, or they're buyers. Those are people you want to network with and get to know and understand their story. My big takeaway too is listen to their story and take the pieces that really resonate with you. not everyone has the perfect path into this. Not everyone's story, like my background, is going to be the one that you choose. If that creative agency, like that I talked about earlier, is really what resonated with you and is something that interests you, that's something you maybe didn't know before that you can research into. So again, it's really pushing, like, be authentic to yourself. There is there's not one right recipe for this. So, and then other things are sneaker events. I called out specifically Nike or Adidas because they tend to have the most of them. But again, those are great places to go to network because there are people there that are super passionate about the same things that you are passionate about. So it's typically a really good networking place. Speaker series, again, absorb as much knowledge and content as you possibly can, especially if it's free. Those are things that you just, you can't put a value on it. And then Design Week. I'm from the West Coast and originally from Portland, so I know Portland has a pretty big Design Week, but I think pretty much every major city has these items. And these are really where you're going to get a lot of the speaker series. You're going to get a ton of companies coming in and trying to network as well and trying to get, some good talent. So those are really good tools to be around other creatives. That's your ultimate goal, is to network with people who have done it already, or, work with people who are also trying to get into it too. You don't have to be alone in this space. There's really good tools. And again, that's why I go back to the Sneaker Essentials Facebook page. Usually there's all one unifying goal. We're all trying to kind of get somewhere, whether we're in the industry and we're trying to grow into a different space, or you're trying to, break into the industry. We're all here to kind of help each other out, at least in that Facebook page and space. So it's a really good tool to kind of use. I threw in this quote because I think it's a good one. Learn from the greats and be greater. Trial and error takes a lot of time. So if you can kind of skip that process yourself and learn from other people and then utilize that to make yourself greater, that's essential. That's again going to save you time. It's going to save you energy. It's going to save you the pain points, because errors happen. We're all human. It will happen in your career. Failures happen all the time, and we learn from them. But if you have someone that can say, I did X, Y, and Z, I don't recommend you do X, Y, and Z, that's knowledge that's, again, super priceless. Like, that's the things that you want to hear. And, you can kind of navigate around that as well. So I'll jump back again to some questions. Let's see here. Maya had a question about where you can find sneaker events for Nike and Adidas. I feel like Washington, D.C. is very limited. I will agree with that. So coming from originally from Portland, there was a ton of events because I was in the hub of sneakers. If you have a passion for sneakers and you haven't visited Portland, I strongly recommend it. The amount of talent and just the pool there is insane. It's incredible. I know that the bigger cities that they usually hit are LA, New York, Chicago, Atlanta. Those are probably, the most common. They do. Definitely following their pages, following and just seeing, what they're posting and different events that they're hosting.
And also too, I think I have so if you go on their apps, like if you download Nike's app, they do have a calendar where they may show, like if you put in your city, they can show you where they may be having the closest events to your city. Same thing with Adidas. One thing I did when I was in the DMV area, I would go on Eventbrite and just type in sneakers. And whatever event popped up, I showed up, even if it's something as small as the grand opening of a new Foot Locker or a Finish Line, or they're doing giving away sneakers to kids, whatever the case was, anything that was sneaker related, I would just show up and just make my face known and just talk to people. So and also too, another thing that the program Sneaker Essentials does offer is a community, or whatever city you may be in. Once you are in the program, there is a Facebook group of different people who may be from your same city, who may be a little bit more connected than you are because you may be new to the game or new to the industry, whatever the case may be. But there are communities out there in your city. They may not be as huge as like a New York, Portland, or LA, but trust me, there are sneaker enthusiasts in your city. So if you get into this program, you will get connected to the community. Back to you, Meggan.
Thanks for adding that. Yeah, I mean, there's usually every company has a new technology platform too, and they'll have really big events when they do drops. Those are also things to look out for. So when you start to see a company, you know, really trying to push a product, push new technology, they will usually have a pretty widespread of different events around large and small cities. So that's also another thing to kind of look out for as well. So the fifth and final tip that I have is utilizing recruiters. I think this is sometimes talked about, but I don't think that there is a lot of, you know, just general knowledge behind this if you haven't really ever used a recruiter or been in that space. But when you kind of get to a position where you have a really good portfolio, you feel really good about kind of your foundation and you're ready to get that foot in the door, recruiter and recruiting agencies can really help you get into that interview. And that's, you know, again, the hardest part is just getting that interview. I mean, I think it's fair to say for most of you, all it takes is just getting in front of someone and you can sell and you know that you can do it and you can get hired. And, you know, I don't doubt that at all, but it's just getting in the door that seems to be the hardest part. And I think we all know the pain points of filling out all the information when you apply for a job, and you attach your resume, and you still have to fill out this form. It takes forever. And then to know, oh, you just didn't make the cut for the interview. So recruiting is kind of like, it takes a little bit of that pain point out. We call them headhunters. So just a little bit of background behind them. There are talent acquisition companies. Their whole job is to get talent into the right fit and job. And I threw out just a couple names. This is a general just search of the larger ones. There are going to be some that are in your area, so you'll just have to kind of search there. And I just want to call out, these aren't any specific call outs to what Under Armour would use or what other big companies would use. It's, you know, that's information that I personally don't even know or have access to. But if you just have never heard of a talent acquisition company, I did throw out some names that you can kind of Google and just get a little bit more general knowledge in there. So the way that recruiting companies work, there's kind of two paths within them. They hire either contract roles, which we call them an ETW. They're an external temporary worker. That's when you have like a 3 or 6 or a 1 year contract. They only go up to a year because there are limitations. You should always, so when you work for a big company, you should, and you're doing jobs that other people are doing, you're entitled to have the benefits and all of the things that come with it. So if you're in a contract for a year and that company still hasn't hired you, you know, for a full time to have all of those things, you know, that's almost unfair. So that's why there's limitations to that. And then the other path is they can try and get you in to be a full-time employee. So, I mean, I'll go back and say being a contract is a great foot in the door. That gets you into teams. It gets you in front of managers, hiring managers. So that's a great tool to network. Sometimes it can be a pain point for people because, you know, you can kind of get in this contract cycle where you're going from contract to contract. But some people actually prefer that. They like to move around to different companies and they like that exposure. So it just tends to work out for them even better. And then the way that these recruiting agencies do make money, because I do think that that's important to call out, is when you're a contractor, you'll make a portion of the pay. So the recruiting agency will take a portion of the pay, and then they pay you. So your employer is the actual talent acquisition company, but you will work on site at a role. For the full-time employee, if you get the job, that recruiting agency or the talent acquisition company will get a portion paid out to them. That has nothing, it's unrelated to you at all. It's just a payment of the service that they're doing for the company by taking all this time and searching and sifting through talent to try and get the best people in front. So I used a headhunter for almost a year. I had a really, really, really good partner, and I had a great individual that, you know, every time I interviewed, I got really strong feedback, and she's like, we're going to get you into this, you know, a really good spot. So it is something that I can vouch for. It worked for me. And it kind of keep you kind of seeing what else is out there. It never hurts to see what else is out there and what other things are kind of being offered. And then other things, other tools, LinkedIn is a great tool to figure out what jobs are open. And I think more and more companies are utilizing it. Recruiters utilize LinkedIn all the time as well. So they can poach you if you have a really good LinkedIn profile. So it's worth taking time to kind of build that up. And then I call out Malachi. Malachi is a company that works for the sports industry, and they post only sports industry roles. So if action sports is something that you're interested in, Malachi is a really good resource if you don't want to filter through like all the ITs and all of the other job postings. And then the company career sites are also, again, just a really great tool. Just check them every day, see what's new. You can set up alerts on specific roles, so you can get a quick email out to, you know, because if you just want to be the first one to kind of try and get a resume in. If you can get to the top of the list, you're just a little bit closer. Those are definitely my 5 top tips. Obviously, I can go on and on. I think of things that you can do, but I do think that these 5 things are the ones that are going to kind of expedite your timeline, because a lot of us, especially when we're trying to change careers or kind of break into the industry at a later date, we don't have 5-10 years to kind of spend in this. So I try to think of the things that can kind of expedite and not really like slow you down. And then again, I just can't stress enough how big just networking is, and really just having conversations, even if it doesn't really amount to anything. Those friendships in that space and in that role are really, really, really good to have. So build your creative community, build that community that kind of, again, keeps you inspired. There's going to be a lot of people that don't understand what you're doing. They're going to say you can't do it, that, you know, you have to go through all this schooling, and, you know, that schooling is expensive. So they're like, you know, you just have to go through this kind of cookie cutter process. And I can tell you right now, that's not true. It's not true. It wasn't true for me. There's so many different ways and avenues getting into this. And I do interview all the time. I'm not really looking at someone's schooling, to be completely honest. I'm looking at how they're selling themselves, their expertise. If they took the time to educate themselves on their own and they have certificates on their own, to me, that means more, because they're hungry, they're eager, and that's what we need more of. So I think it's really good. I'll go over this to see if there's any last questions that I missed, and then we can kind of wrap this one up. Constantino, he did call out, is it possible to get into designing without great drawing skills? How can I improve those skills? That's a great question. When I first started out, could not draw. I absolutely could not draw, and I still can't hand draw. And a lot of designers are that way. They don't hand draw. Illustrator is a great tool. It's a great tool because there are tricks in that platform that can smooth out your lines and make it look like you are a very good designer. I know from experience. I just practice sketching. Again, practice will always get you closer to where you want to go, but there are ways to kind of fake it. And a lot of really good designers know these tips, because if you're not great at drawing, that's totally okay, because that takes a lot of time. A lot of designers aren't going to hand draw all of their sketches because they just don't have the time to do it. So they're short keying, they're using all of these little tricks and tips, all the tricks, I guess, in Illustrator to get it, roughly to where it needs to be. So I think this is a really good call out. You don't have to be really good at drawing to even be a designer. So the biggest lesson, learn Illustrator, learn those tips and tricks, research of how to do that. I
watch a lot of YouTube videos.
Watch a lot of YouTube videos. I mean, honestly, that's why I did call out the So Heidi page, because she does have a ton of just content about that. She will pick it apart and teach you each tool in Illustrator, and it's just so important to know all of those things, because like I said before, it's one thing to be to know how to use it, but you got to be quick at it. You got to be sharp, because you're going to be up against people who have probably been in that program for a very long time. So you just have to do the practice every day. I think that kind of covers all the questions.
Yeah. Meggan, thank you so much for your time. I think the information was really, really great. So everyone who tuned in, I hope that you were able to pick up the 5 tips. I'm going to summarize them really quick. So the first one is to know your path to your dream job. Start small. Being a thought leader, mentorship and networking, and then recruiters. So pretty much with all those 5 tips that you shared with us, I think the main word that pops in my head is getting involved. You gotta get your hands dirty. I feel like the footwear industry is one that if you're standing on the outside looking at it, you look at it as a really sexy industry, right? But people don't know that you have to put in work. You have to talk to people. You have to set up meetings. You have to send emails. You have to build relationships. So we thank you so much for just sharing that. And it's also great to be able to hear from someone who's in the industry and, doing great work and being involved with, projects that we see and see as great products. So that is amazing. So I guess at this point, Meggan, if you could share your social media with people who are, viewing today that, might want to follow you, see some of your designs, who might just have some questions, where can they reach you?
Yeah, so my biggest one I would suggest is just Instagram, and my handle is sto.megs. F as in Frank, T as in Tom, M as in Megan, and then .megs. It is private, so I will have to accept you. That's just kind of part of the job. We tend to be pretty tight here. We can't share out a lot of the things, but I'm definitely happy to connect and to help if anyone has questions.
Yeah, that's awesome. So thank you so much for that. To everybody else who tuned in, you can follow me as well. Mine is Denis, DENIS _ Boateng, BOATENG. You can follow me as well. If you have any questions regarding to sneaker school, sneaker essentials, please feel free. I also have a link in my bio that you can hit to sign up for Sneaker Essentials. There's so many tools and opportunities available. I'll be doing more webinars. So guys, don't be shy. Don't be scared. Slide in the DM, ask questions. follow people who are also involved or doing things that you would like to do. Ask questions, introduce yourself, ask about their story. So then you can get them to talk about themselves and they can drop gems to you. So yeah, just hit the link in the bio if you have any questions. Follow me, follow Yellowbrick.sneakers. And also too, if you want to go directly to the website is yellowbrick.co/sneakers, and you will find that information of this great program that is in partnership with FIT featuring Complex. So guys, thank you so much for your time, and have a good one.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Meg. Thank you.